The living nightmare, Surinam toad biology. All right, so let's start with the basics here, because honestly, even the normal stuff about this creature is absolutely bonkers. Meet the Surinam toad, or as scientists call it, Pipa pipa. And yes, they named it twice because apparently one pipa wasn't enough to contain this level of weirdness. Now, when I first saw a picture of this thing, I genuinely thought someone was pranking me. It looks like someone took a regular frog, ran it over with a steamroller, then decided to add some alien DNA for good measure. We're talking about a completely flat, pancake-shaped amphibian that measures up to 8 inches across. But here's what really gets me. This thing is so flat that when it sits on the bottom of a river, it's basically invisible. It's like nature's ultimate stealth bomber. Except instead of dropping bombs, it's about to show you the most disturbing reproductive strategy you've ever seen. Now here's where things get absolutely insane. This isn't just some weird-looking frog that happens to live in water. This is a creature that has completely revolutionized what we think amphibians can do. Scientists have discovered that the Surinam toad represents one of evolution's most radical experiments. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it's like nothing else on Earth. The first thing that'll blow your mind is that this toad has completely given up on land. Most frogs and toads split their time between water and land, right? Not these guys. They are 100% aquatic, which means they've had to solve problems that no other amphibian has ever faced. And the solutions they came up with? They're so bizarre that when researchers first documented them, other scientists literally didn't believe the reports. But here's what really sets your brain on fire. Recent genetic studies have revealed that what we thought was one species of Surinam toad is actually at least 15 different species that have been masquerading under the same name for over 150 years. Think about that for a second. We've been looking at these creatures for centuries, and we completely missed the fact that we were dealing with an entire family of biological aliens. And when I say aliens, I'm not being dramatic. This thing has features that are so unusual, so completely unlike anything else in the vertebrate world, that if you found it fossilized on Mars, you'd assume it evolved on a completely different planet. The skin alone is a masterpiece of biological engineering. Unlike every other frog species on Earth, the Surinam toad's skin has this incredibly specialized structure that can actually reshape itself at will. We're not talking about color changes here. We're talking about the ability to create biological architecture. The skin can form chambers, channels, and specialized compartments that serve functions we're still trying to understand. But the real kicker? This creature has been perfecting these alien abilities for an absolutely mind-boggling amount of time. Molecular studies show that their lineage goes back approximately 160 million years. To put that in perspective, these toads were already ancient when the first dinosaurs were just figuring out how to walk upright. They've been sitting in South American rivers, looking like pancakes and developing the most outrageous biological tricks since before the supercontinent Gondwana broke apart. And here's something that still gives scientists nightmares. Despite having one of the longest evolutionary histories of any living amphibian group, they've left virtually no fossil record. It's like they've been evolutionary ghosts, persisting through massive extinction events, ice ages, and continental drift while leaving almost no trace of their existence. The only fossil evidence we have is a single 10-million-year-old bone fragment from Venezuela. One piece. That's it. So what you're looking at when you see a Surinam toad isn't just a weird animal. You're looking at a living time capsule that has survived everything Earth could throw at it while developing biological capabilities that seem to defy the laws of vertebrate anatomy. And trust me, we haven't even scratched the surface of how strange this gets. Because everything I just told you, that's just the warm-up act for what this creature can actually do. When your body becomes a nursery. Okay, so now we get to the part that's going to absolutely mess with your head. Because what I'm about to describe is so disturbing, so completely alien, that your brain is going to reject it as impossible. But I promise you, every single thing I'm about to tell you is backed by decades of scientific research and high-speed camera footage that'll haunt your dreams. Let's talk about how Surinam toads make babies. And when I say make babies, I don't mean the cute, normal way that most animals do it. I mean a process so bizarre that it looks like something a horror movie director would come up with after a really bad fever dream. It all starts with what scientists call the nuptial dance, which sounds romantic until you realize it's actually a 72-hour underwater marathon that would make Olympic swimmers cry. Picture this. Two pancake-shaped toads performing synchronized swimming routines in muddy water, doing loop-de-loops like aquatic acrobats. We're talking about over 100 perfectly coordinated flips through the water column, and this goes on for up to 12 hours straight. But here's where it gets weird. At the peak of each loop, when they're completely upside down in the water, the female releases between 3 to 10 eggs. Think about that for a second. He's essentially playing biological Tetris, carefully positioning each egg onto specific spots on her dorsal surface. And this continues, flip after flip, egg batch after egg batch, until there are between 60 to 100 eggs perfectly arranged across her back like some kind of living egg carton. Now, if you're thinking, okay, that's weird, but I guess she just carries them around until they hatch, you're about to have your mind completely blown. Because what happens next is so insane that when scientists first documented it, other researchers literally didn't believe the reports. Within 24 hours, and I want you to really process this, within 24 hours, those eggs start sinking into her skin, not sitting on top of it, sinking into her skin. The female's back literally opens up and swallows each egg through large furrows that form specifically at the egg deposition sites. But wait, it gets worse. Once the eggs are embedded, her skin begins growing over them, creating individual honeycomb-like chambers. Picture a living, breathing apartment complex built directly into her flesh, with each unit custom designed to house a developing baby toad. By day 14, these chambers become heavily vascularized, meaning they're connected directly to her blood supply. Research by Fernandez and colleagues used light microscopy to discover that the female's skin actually lacks the normal structural layers found in every other frog species. Instead, she has this completely specialized architecture with irregularly arranged collagen bundles that can reshape themselves to accommodate this biological nightmare. Her back literally transforms into a living nursery. And here's the part that'll really mess you up. The developing babies do not just sit there passively. They develop small temporary gills that engage directly with the mother's tissue, creating blood-based interactions between mother and offspring. After day 14, the embryonic yolk sac completely disappears, which means these babies are getting their nutrition directly from mom's circulatory system. Think about what that means. This isn't just carrying eggs on your back. This is a level of biological connection that rivals placental mammals. The mother's body is literally feeding these developing toads through her own bloodstream, while they're embedded in chambers carved into her flesh. For 4 months, this female walks around, swims around, with up to 100 babies growing in her back. Can you imagine? Every movement, every feeding session, every time she needs to escape a predator, she's doing it while carrying what essentially amounts to a living, breathing apartment building on her spine. And then comes the birth. After 4 months of this biological horror show, the babies don't emerge as tadpoles like normal frogs. Oh no, that would be too easy. They emerge as fully formed miniature adult toads that literally burst out of the chambers in her back. High-speed footage shows these tiny toads popping out of their mother's skin, like the world's most disturbing Jack-in-the-Box. The whole thing is so extreme, so completely unlike anything else in the vertebrate world, that it represents a level of maternal investment that we didn't even know was possible in amphibians. This female essentially turns herself into a living incubator, with physiological connections that would make mammalian pregnancy look simple by comparison. And the craziest part? She can do this multiple times. After giving birth to 100 tiny toads through her back skin, she can heal up and do the whole thing again. It's like evolution looked at normal reproduction and said, you know what? Let's make this as horrifying and complicated as possible. This isn't just weird animal behavior. This is a complete reimagining of what vertebrate reproduction can be. And honestly, once you see the footage of baby toads emerging from their mother's back, you'll never look at amphibians the same way again. The ultimate suction weapon. Alright, so you're probably still trying to process the whole Bob babies bursting out of mom's back situation, but trust me, we're just getting started with the biological impossibilities here. Because what I'm about to show you might actually be even more mind-bending than the reproduction nightmare we just witnessed. Let's talk about how this creature eats. And when I say eats, I don't mean it nibbles on some algae or catches flies with its tongue like a normal amphibian. No, the Surinam toad has developed a feeding mechanism so extreme, so completely unprecedented in the vertebrate world, that it's literally rewriting biology textbooks as we speak. Picture this. You're a small fish or a tiny crustacean, just minding your own business in some murky South American river water. Suddenly, what you thought was just a flat rock on the bottom opens up and becomes a biological black hole that sucks you into oblivion in less than 25 milliseconds. You don't even have time to register what's happening before you're gone. That's the Surinam toad's feeding strategy. And it's so insane that when researchers first studied it using high-speed cameras, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Dr. David Kundal and his team discovered something that defies everything we thought we knew about how four-legged animals can feed. The Surinam toad might be the only tetrapod vertebrate on Earth capable of enlarging its entire trunk during suction feeding. Let me break that down for you because your brain probably just skipped over how impossible that sounds. Most animals that use suction feeding, like certain fish, can expand their mouth and throat area. But this toad, it expands its entire torso. We're talking about the buccopharyngeal cavity, basically the mouth and throat region, expanding to a volume equal to the entire resting body size. Think about that for a second. Imagine if you could suddenly expand your chest and abdomen to double your body size, creating a vacuum so powerful that you could suck a basketball through a garden hose. That's essentially what this toad does, except it happens faster than you can blink. Here's where it gets absolutely wild. To create this expansion, the toad has to completely reorganize its internal anatomy in real time. All the major organs, and I mean all of them, the hyoid apparatus, larynx, heart, lungs, liver, esophagus, and stomach, shift rearward up to 1/3 of the body length to create the expansion space. It's like watching a biological transformer rearrange its internal architecture on command. The hyoid apparatus, that's the support structure for the tongue and throat in most animals, is completely disconnected from the skull in these toads. Instead, it's enclosed by the pectoral girdle and powered by retractor muscles that originate from the femur. Yes, you heard that right. Muscles from the leg bones are helping to power the feeding mechanism. It's like evolution took every rule about vertebrate anatomy and decided to throw them out the window. But here's the really insane part. The system couples hyoid retraction with something called axial protraction and pectoral depression. Basically, modified tail muscles slide the entire axial skeleton forward on the pelvic girdle, while robust muscle pairs depress the ventral pectoral elements. The whole thing turns the toad into a biological accordion that can create suction forces powerful enough to vacuum up prey from several body lengths away. Laboratory observations have recorded these toads achieving 1.5 times resting trunk volume increase capability. That's like suddenly inflating your entire torso to 1.5 times its normal size in 12 milliseconds, while creating a vacuum that could suck a tennis ball through a straw. And the results? This feeding system is so efficient that stomach content analyses show their diet is dominated by 67% cyclopoid copepods, tiny crustaceans that are incredibly fast and agile. These toads are catching prey that most other predators can't even get close to, simply by turning their entire body into a biological shop vac. What makes this even more remarkable is that these toads have completely given up on traditional feeding mechanisms. They have no teeth whatsoever and no tongue to speak of. They rely entirely on inertial suction, making them the ultimate sit-and-wait aquatic carnivores. They literally just park themselves on the river bottom, looking like a pancake-shaped rock, and wait for something edible to swim within range. Then, whoosh, instant biological vacuum cleaner. The whole feeding event happens so fast that prey animals don't even have time to react. High-speed footage shows water and prey being sucked into the toad's mouth at velocities that create visible vortices in the surrounding water. It's like watching a biological tornado form and disappear in the blink of an eye. And here's what really gets me. This isn't some recently evolved adaptation. This feeding mechanism has been perfected over millions of years, meaning these toads have been sitting at the bottom of rivers looking innocent and harmless, while possessing what might be the most powerful suction feeding system in the entire vertebrate world. Scientists are still trying to understand exactly how the biomechanics work, because the level of coordination required to reorganize your entire internal anatomy in milliseconds, while creating that much suction force, shouldn't be possible according to everything we know about vertebrate physiology. Yet here's this flat, seemingly simple toad that's been casually breaking the laws of biology every time it gets hungry. It's like discovering that your pet goldfish has been secretly operating a nuclear reactor in its fishbowl, completely impossible, yet undeniably real. And the best part? This is just one of their weird abilities. We haven't even gotten to their alien sensory superpowers yet. Alien sensory superpowers. Okay, so we've covered the nightmare reproduction and the impossible feeding mechanism, but now we're getting into territory that honestly sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. Because the Surinam toad's sensory abilities are so bizarre, so completely unlike anything else in the animal kingdom, that if you described them to someone without context, they'd assume you were talking about an alien species from another planet. Let's start with the most obvious weirdness, their fingertips. Now, when I say fingertips, I'm not talking about normal amphibian digits. These things have been modified into what can only be described as biological alien sensors. Each fingertip has been transformed into a star-shaped sensory organ with 4 small lobes that are absolutely packed with concentrated nerve endings. Think about that for a moment. Evolution took normal finger bones and said, you know what? Let's turn these into biological antennae. These star-shaped appendages are so specialized that the Surinam toad actually has an alternate name, the star-fingered toad, which honestly sounds like something you'd encounter in a UFO abduction story. But here's what makes these finger stars absolutely incredible. They function as sophisticated mechanosensory devices that allow the toad to detect and manipulate prey with surgical precision in complete darkness. We're talking about tactile sensitivity so advanced that these toads can identify, locate, and capture tiny moving organisms in murky water where visibility is essentially zero. Imagine being able to see with your fingertips so clearly that you could catch a fly in a completely dark room just by feeling the air vibrations. That's essentially what these toads are doing underwater, except they're detecting movements and pressure changes that are smaller than what human hands could ever perceive. But the finger stars are just the beginning of this sensory nightmare. Here's where things get really alien. Adult Surinam toads have retained their lateral line system throughout their entire adult life. Now, if you're not familiar with lateral line systems, they're basically the pressure-sensitive organ networks that fish use to detect motion and changes in water pressure around them. Almost all amphibians lose this system when they metamorphose from tadpoles to adults, because, they're supposed to live on land where lateral lines are useless, but not the Surinam toad. Oh no, these things looked at evolution and said, actually, we're keeping our fish sensors, thank you very much. They have scattered linear patterns of neuromast organs, specialized sensory cells, distributed across their entire body surface that can detect the slightest motion or pressure changes in the surrounding water. Think about what this means. These toads essentially have 360-degree motion detection covering their entire body. Every ripple, every vibration, every tiny movement in the water around them gets detected by this network of biological motion sensors. It's like having a full-body radar system that works underwater. So picture this. You've got a creature that looks like a pancake sitting motionless on the river bottom. Its eyes are tiny, positioned on top of its head, and basically useless for hunting in murky water. But its entire body surface is functioning as a sophisticated detection grid, while specialized star-shaped fingertips are ready to provide precision tactile feedback the moment something edible comes within range. This sensory combination is so advanced that these toads can hunt effectively in environments where visual predation would be completely impossible. We're talking about acidic, murky waters where you can't see your hand in front of your face. Yet these toads are detecting and capturing fast-moving prey with success rates that would make most predators jealous. Recent research has revealed that electroreception, the ability to detect electrical fields generated by living organisms, was lost in the Anuran lineage millions of years ago. So these toads can't sense electrical fields like sharks or some fish can, but they've more than compensated for this limitation with the sophistication of their mechanical and pressure sensing capabilities. The lateral line system is purely mechanosensory in these toads, but it's so sensitive that it can detect water movements created by prey animals that are several body lengths away. Combined with the star-shaped fingertip sensors, they've created a detection network that gives them supernatural awareness of their aquatic environment. And here's what really blows my mind. This entire sensory suite is perfectly adapted to their ambush predation lifestyle. They don't need to actively hunt or chase prey like most predators. Instead, they've turned themselves into biological landmines with the most advanced detection systems in the amphibian world. They just sit there looking like a harmless rock, while their body-wide sensor network monitors everything happening around them. When something edible ventures too close, those star-shaped fingertips provide the precise tactile information needed for successful prey manipulation while the lateral line system ensures they know exactly where the prey is positioned for that devastating suction attack we talked about earlier. It's like evolution created the ultimate underwater surveillance system and attached it to a biological vacuum cleaner. The combination of whole-body motion detection, precision fingertip sensors, and that insane suction feeding mechanism makes them probably the most efficient sit-and-wait aquatic predators on the planet. But here's the kicker. Despite having some of the most advanced sensory capabilities in the vertebrate world, these toads are almost completely deaf to airborne sounds and their vision is terrible. They've essentially traded traditional senses for specialized underwater detection abilities that are so sophisticated, they seem designed by an advanced alien civilization. And remember, they've been perfecting these sensory superpowers for over 160 million years, sitting in South American rivers and developing biological technologies that our best engineers are still trying to understand and replicate. It's honestly terrifying to think about what else these living fossils might be capable of that we haven't discovered yet. Living fossils from Gondwana. Alright, so we've talked about the nightmare reproduction, the impossible feeding mechanism, and the alien sensory superpowers. But now I need to tell you something that's going to completely reframe everything you think you know about these creatures. Because the Surinam toad isn't just some weird modern animal that happened to evolve a few strange tricks. Oh no, this thing is essentially a time traveler from an alien world. We're about to dive into an evolutionary timeline that's so mind-bendingly ancient, it's going to make your brain hurt. Ready for this? The crown group diversification of Surinam toads occurred approximately 160 million years ago. Let me put that in perspective for you. These toads were already ancient when the first dinosaurs were just figuring out how to walk on two legs. Think about that for a second. When Allosaurus was terrorizing the late Jurassic period, Surinam toads were already sitting in prehistoric rivers, looking like pancakes and probably freaking out the early mammals. They've been perfecting their biological nightmare abilities since before flowers existed on Earth, before grass, before most of the animals you can think of had even appeared in the fossil record. But here's where the story gets absolutely insane. Recent molecular phylogenetic studies have blown apart everything we thought we knew about these creatures. Dr. Antoine Fouquet and his team published research in 2022 that revealed what might be the biggest biological plot twist of the decade. Remember how we've been calling this thing Pipa pipa, like it's a single species? Well, turns out we've been spectacularly wrong for over 150 years. Using short mitochondrial DNA sequences combined with 10 nuclear gene markers, researchers discovered that what we thought was one species is actually at least 15 distinct lineages that have been masquerading under the same name since scientists first started studying them. We're talking about 15 different species of biological aliens that have been hiding in plain sight, and we completely missed it. Some of these closely related lineages show 0 shared nuclear DNA alleles, meaning they're genetically distinct species that are so different they can't even exchange genetic material anymore. Think about the implications here. For centuries, scientists have been looking at these creatures, documenting their weird behaviors, studying their impossible biology, and we didn't even realize we were dealing with an entire family tree of evolutionary masterpieces. It's like discovering that what you thought was one type of dinosaur was actually 15 different species, each with its own specialized adaptations. But the evolutionary timeline gets even more mind-melting. The biogeographic analysis shows that these lineages represent a basal split in the Pipid family tree that likely occurred during the breakup of Western Gondwana. We're talking about continental drift-level ancient here. South American Pipa species diverged from their African relatives somewhere between 105 to 136 million years ago, when the continents were literally tearing apart. So these toads didn't just evolve their weird abilities. They've been riding continental plates across geological time while developing biological technologies that seem impossible by today's standards. They witnessed the formation of the Atlantic Ocean. They survived the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs. They've been through ice ages, mass extinctions, and volcanic apocalypses that wiped out most life on Earth. The biogeographic pattern suggests an early Neogene Amazonian origin, with initial evolutionary splits between the Guyana-Brazilian shields versus Western Amazonia, followed by secondary dispersals to Atlantic forest and Trans-Andean regions. This diversification coincided with major paleogeographic changes in South America, meaning their evolution is directly tied to the geological forces that shaped an entire continent. But here's what really keeps me up at night. Despite having one of the longest evolutionary histories of any living amphibian group, and despite the Pipidae family having a rich fossil record spanning the Cretaceous period, the Pipa lineage has virtually no fossil representation. We're talking about evolutionary ghosts. Only a single 10-million-year-old sacrum fragment from Venezuela's Corralito Formation shows characteristics suggesting a close relationship to modern Pipa pipa. One bone fragment. That's literally all we have from 160 million years of evolutionary history. It's like these toads have been deliberately erasing their tracks through geological time. Think about how terrifying that is from a scientific perspective. We have fossils of massive dinosaurs, tiny insects preserved in amber, ancient fish, early mammals. But these toads, which have been around longer than most major animal groups, have left almost no trace in the fossil record. They're like biological ninjas that have been perfecting their impossible abilities, while remaining essentially invisible to paleontologists. This means that every living Surinam toad you see today is essentially a walking museum of biological innovations that have been tested and refined across geological timescales that dwarf human comprehension. The back-brooding reproduction system, it's been working for over 100 million years. The whole-body suction feeding mechanism, perfected across multiple mass extinction events. The alien sensory capabilities, fine-tuned while continents drifted across the planet. These are not just weird animals. They're living artifacts from a prehistoric world that was so different from today that the very continents were in different positions. They've survived everything Earth could throw at them, from asteroid impacts to ice ages to volcanic winters, while maintaining biological capabilities that our best scientists are still trying to understand. And the craziest part? We're still discovering new species within this ancient lineage. That 2022 study identifying 15 different lineages? The researchers openly admitted that they probably haven't found them all yet. There could be dozens more species of these biological time travelers hiding in South American rivers, each one potentially carrying evolutionary secrets that date back to when Earth was a completely alien world. So when you look at a Surinam toad, you're not just looking at a weird amphibian. You're looking at a living representative of deep evolutionary time, a creature that has been perfecting impossible biology since before most of the rules of vertebrate anatomy were even established. They're literally alien visitors from Earth's own prehistoric past, and they've been sitting in muddy rivers, looking like pancakes, while carrying the secrets of biological innovation across geological time. It's honestly mind-blowing to think that something this ancient, this evolutionarily significant, is still alive and functioning perfectly in today's world. They're like biological time capsules that somehow survived the ultimate test of time while developing capabilities that still seem impossible by modern standards. When extinction knocks on your door. All right, so we've just established that these creatures are basically biological time travelers that have survived everything Earth could throw at them for 160 million years. Asteroid impacts, ice ages, continental drift, mass extinctions. They've weathered it all while perfecting their alien abilities. But here's the thing that's going to absolutely break your heart. These evolutionary masterpieces might not make it through the next century. And that's not me being dramatic. That's the cold, hard reality of what's happening to these living fossils right now, as we speak. Now, on paper, the Surinam toad's conservation status looks pretty good. The IUCN currently lists them as least concern, which basically means scientists think they're doing fine. They've got a large geographic range across tropical South America, their populations seem generally stable, and they're not facing immediate extinction risk. Sounds reassuring, right? Wrong, because that broad-scale assessment is missing some absolutely terrifying details that are happening at the local level. It's like looking at a house from the street and saying, everything looks fine, while the foundation is literally cracking apart underneath. Let me paint you a picture of what these creatures actually need to survive, because their requirements are so specific, so finely tuned, that even small changes can be catastrophic. Surinam toads don't just need any old water, they need very specific aquatic conditions. We're talking about warm, acidic, murky waters with pH levels between 5.6 and 6.0. They've evolved for millions of years in these precise chemical conditions, and their entire biology is calibrated to this exact environment. But here's the nightmare scenario that's already unfolding. Climate change models predict 2 to 3 degrees Celsius temperature increases in the Amazon basin by 2050. That might not sound like much, But for a creature that's adapted to very specific thermal conditions over millions of years, it's like suddenly asking a polar bear to live in Death Valley. Combined with altered precipitation patterns, we're looking at fundamental changes to the hydrological systems these toads depend on. Drought conditions are becoming more frequent and severe. And when your entire evolutionary strategy is based on being 100% aquatic, drought is basically a death sentence. And it gets worse, much worse. These toads have been found displaced to terrestrial locations where they literally cannot survive. Think about the desperation that would drive a completely aquatic animal to try living on land. It's like finding dolphins beached on highways. It doesn't happen unless something has gone catastrophically wrong with their environment. But climate change is just one piece of this extinction puzzle. The real immediate threat is habitat destruction on a scale that's hard to comprehend. Between 1970 and 2016, Brazil lost approximately 300,000 square kilometers of Amazon rainforest. That's an area larger than the entire United Kingdom, just gone. And with it, countless rivers, streams, and wetland systems that these toads have called home for millions of years. Agricultural expansion is turning pristine river systems into cattle ranches and soybean fields. Mining operations are dumping mercury and other heavy metals into the water, creating toxic conditions that these sensitive amphibians simply cannot tolerate. Agricultural runoff introduces pesticides and fertilizers that completely alter the delicate water chemistry these ancient creatures require. Remember, these toads need very specific pH levels and water conditions. When agricultural chemicals start flowing into their rivers, it's like slowly poisoning the only environment they can survive in. And because they're completely aquatic, they can't just move to a new habitat like terrestrial animals might. But here's the part that absolutely terrifies me, and should terrify anyone who understands how disease works in amphibian populations. Surinam toads have a complete lack of dermal antimicrobial peptides. Basically, they have zero chemical defense system, protecting them from skin diseases. Most amphibians have these peptides as a first line of defense against pathogens like the chytrid fungus, which has been absolutely devastating frog populations worldwide. But Surinam toads? They're essentially walking around with no immune system protection against the diseases that are wiping out amphibians across the planet. Think about what that means. These creatures survived the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. They made it through multiple ice ages. They weathered mass extinction events that eliminated most life on Earth. But they might be taken out by a fungal disease because they never evolved the chemical defenses that other amphibians have. It's like discovering that Superman is vulnerable to the common cold. This ancient lineage that has survived everything geological time could throw at it might be eliminated by pathogens that are spreading rapidly due to global trade and climate change. And here's what really gets me. We're still discovering new species within this group. Remember those 15 different lineages that scientists just identified in 2022? We don't even know what we're losing yet. There could be dozens of unique evolutionary solutions, millions of years of biological innovation, sitting in rivers that are being destroyed faster than we can study them. Each of these newly discovered lineages represents a separate evolutionary experiment that has been running for millions of years. They're like biological libraries containing information about survival strategies, adaptation mechanisms, and biological innovations that we can't even imagine yet. And we're potentially losing them before we even know they exist. The really heartbreaking part is that these creatures have been the ultimate survivors. They've made it through everything Earth could throw at them by being incredibly specialized and perfectly adapted to their environment. But that same specialization that made them successful for 160 million years is now making them incredibly vulnerable to rapid environmental change. They can't adapt fast enough to keep up with the pace of human-induced environmental destruction. Evolution works on geological timescales, but deforestation and climate change are happening on human timescales. It's like asking a creature that's spent millions of years learning to survive in one very specific environment to suddenly adapt to a completely different world in just a few decades. And the cruelest irony? These toads are environmental indicators. Their presence tells us that aquatic ecosystems are healthy and functioning properly. Their absence is like a canary in a coal mine, warning us that something fundamental is breaking down in these river systems. So we're not just talking about losing some weird animals with strange reproductive habits. We're talking about losing living representatives of deep evolutionary time, biological time capsules that carry information about survival strategies that have been tested across geological timescales. We're talking about losing pieces of Earth's evolutionary heritage that can never be replaced. The countdown has already started, and for creatures that have survived since before the continents were in their current positions, that's absolutely heartbreaking. Conclusion. So here we are, at the end of this absolutely wild journey through the biology of what might be the most alien creature on our planet. And honestly, I'm sitting here trying to process everything we just learned, and my brain is still struggling to accept that any of this is real. Let's just take a moment to recap the sheer impossibility of what we've discovered. We started with a creature that looks like someone ran a frog over with a steamroller and decided to add some nightmare fuel for good measure. But what we found was so much more extraordinary than that simple description could ever capture. We're talking about an animal that has completely revolutionized vertebrate reproduction by turning the females back into a living nursery with up to 100 individual chambers carved directly into her flesh, not carrying eggs on her back, literally growing babies inside specialized blood-connected compartments in her skin for 4 months. That alone should be enough to earn a spot in the Impossible Biology Hall of Fame. But then we discovered that these toads have also broken every rule we thought we knew about vertebrate feeding mechanisms. They've developed the ability to turn their entire body into a biological vacuum cleaner, reorganizing their internal anatomy in milliseconds to create suction forces that can capture prey faster than most animals can even detect a threat. It's like evolution looked at normal feeding strategies and said, "Hold my beer." And if that wasn't enough, we found out they're walking around with sensory superpowers that seem designed by an advanced alien civilization. Star-shaped fingertips packed with nerve endings, full body motion detection systems, and pressure sensing capabilities so sophisticated they can hunt effectively in complete darkness. They've essentially turned themselves into biological submarines with the most advanced detection equipment in the amphibian world. But here's what really blows my mind. None of this is new. These aren't recent evolutionary innovations or modern adaptations to changing environments. These creatures have been perfecting these impossible abilities for over 160 million years. They were already ancient when dinosaurs were just learning to walk upright. They've been sitting in South American rivers, looking like innocent pancakes, while developing biological technologies that our best scientists are still trying to understand. And then we discovered that what we thought was one species is actually at least 15 different lineages that have been hiding in plain sight for over a century. We've been studying these creatures for generations, and we completely missed the fact that we were dealing with an entire family of evolutionary masterpieces, each one potentially carrying unique biological solutions that have been tested across geological timescales. Think about what that means for our understanding of life on Earth. If we can miss this level of diversity in a relatively well-studied group of animals, what else are we missing? How many other biological miracles are sitting right under our noses, waiting to revolutionize our understanding of what's possible in the natural world? But here's the part that should keep us all awake at night. These living time capsules, these biological libraries containing millions of years of evolutionary innovation, are facing extinction pressures they've never encountered before. Creatures that survived asteroid impacts, ice ages, and continental drift might not make it through the next century because of habitat destruction and climate change happening faster than they can adapt. We're potentially losing pieces of Earth's evolutionary heritage that can never be replaced. Each of these newly discovered lineages represents a separate biological experiment that has been running for millions of years, and we're destroying their habitats before we even fully understand what we're losing. The Surinam toad forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about our planet and our place on it. Here's a creature that has been successfully navigating Earth's challenges for longer than most animal groups have even existed, using biological solutions so sophisticated they seem impossible by modern standards. Yet human activity in just the last few decades has created threats they can't overcome. It's humbling to realize that we're living on a planet with creatures this extraordinary, this evolutionarily significant, and most people have never even heard of them. While we're searching for signs of alien life in distant galaxies, we've got genuine biological aliens right here in South American rivers, carrying evolutionary secrets that could revolutionize our understanding of biology, biomechanics, and adaptation. But there's also something profoundly hopeful in their story. The fact that evolution can produce solutions this creative, this impossible seeming, tells us that life is far more inventive and resilient than we ever imagined. The Surinam toad represents proof that nature can find radical answers to biological challenges we didn't even know existed. Their existence expands our conception of what's possible in the natural world. Every time we think we understand the limits of vertebrate biology, creatures like this show up and completely shatter our assumptions. They remind us that Earth is still full of biological mysteries waiting to be discovered. Evolutionary innovations that could inspire new technologies, medical breakthroughs, and scientific understanding we can't even imagine yet. So the next time someone tells you that we've discovered everything there is to know about life on Earth, remind them about the Surinam toad. Remind them that we live on a planet where females can grow babies in their back skin, where animals can turn their entire body into suction weapons, where creatures can survive across geological timescales, while developing abilities that seem designed by alien intelligence. The Surinam toad is more than just a weird animal with strange habits. It's a reminder that our planet is still full of wonders that can fundamentally change how we understand life itself. It's proof that evolution is far more creative and inventive than we ever dared to imagine. And it's an urgent wake-up call that we need to protect these biological treasures before we lose evolutionary innovations that took hundreds of millions of years to perfect. Because once they're gone, the secrets they carry, the biological solutions they represent, the evolutionary experiments they embody, are gone forever. And that would be a loss not just for science, but for our understanding of what's truly possible in this remarkable universe we call home. The Surinam toad isn't just an animal. It's living proof that reality is far stranger, far more wonderful, and far more worth protecting than we ever imagined.